Welcome to a new episode of our ESFORIN Change Makers podcast. My name is Thea and I'm very pleased to welcome a special guest who will tell us more about his inspiring company in the field of sustainable food production. His name is Claas Ahrens and he is the CEO and one of the co-founders of vGreens, a vertical farming startup that helps to grow, among other things, fresh and sweet strawberries in the city. Hello, Claas. Nice to have you with us, not only digitally, but live in our office in Essen.
All right, perfect. Thank you very much for having me. So, hi, Thea, and very, very honored to be here.
First of all, I like to a tiny or mini introduction so our audience gets a glimpse of your background. You completed an apprenticeship as an industrial mechanic. Then you graduated in mechanical engineering and afterwards in logistics, material and supply chain management. In addition, you gained professional experience in the fields of also logistics, plastics technology company and business consulting, as well a tubular solution for the energy market. And then, finally, you founded vGreens, a company offering automated vertical farms for autonomous food production. So, let's start with the first question. What exactly is vertical farming?
Thanks for the intro. A bit broad, I know. And maybe to get to the question first, what is vertical farming? So basically, with vertical farming, we see controlled environmental agriculture, which is almost 100% control of agriculture inside a building. Let's say a logistical building. So it can be a hub. It can be an old industrial building. It can be some building in the city. Whatever it is, where we try to find a place to grow fruits and vegetables as close as possible to the consumer. That's the idea of vertical farming, basically. And we started with that to figure out what are the boundaries of vertical farming, basically. Yes.
But how did you evolve the idea of founding automated vertical farming? Because as I could see, your CV didn't really reflect a green thumb, or does it?
Well, I still don't have a green thumb myself on a private level, so no, not at all. But if I go through my career so far, everything had to do something with logistics and its challenges, especially when it comes to efficiency, when it comes to fast-moving consumer goods, and That's where I saw the challenges in vertical farming when I started in 2020, is that we can grow various fruits and vegetables, which is cool. It just looks awesome. Although, obviously, it needs to be profitable. And why I started it was because I saw in various videos is that logistically, there were some faults and some steps were not in the right order, let's say. So I figured, okay, there might be a huge lack of efficiency when it comes to profitability of every company growing lettuce, fruits, and vegetables. Because there is more we need to grow as local as possible. There are more resources need to be involved, more connectivity being used, and so on and so forth. So I'm not saying that the industry was bad by that time, but I saw challenges where I thought, okay, I think I need to jump in here. That's my time to shine when it comes to logistics and enterprise resource planning and all this kind of stuff. And that's how I ended up in vertical farming. Sometimes I still wonder myself, but from a green thumb, it doesn't come from that point of view. It rather comes from the logistical part.
Thank you for giving us a glimpse of your motivation. Then I'd like to come back to your company. So what's then your company's vision? Why did you start the company, or why you just said? But what is the vision of a company? And please also let me know more about your technology and know-how behind vGreens.
Well, maybe to go to the root of that idea is when I started vGreens with the idea of bringing better logistical parameters to the industry is, and by that time it was very trendy to think about data-driven production, data-driven logistical steps when it comes to whatever first, mid, or last mile, whatever it is. And even my master thesis was data-driven production. So I thought, okay, logistics is one thing. So for everyone who's not involved in logistics, it's not only trucks and trains and planes. It's more of to know what is when where to the right amount. So with that in mind, the idea or the vision of vGreens is to implement data-driven production where we can use the demand-based approach of producing what is actually needed, not more, not less. And the idea behind it, from a technical perspective, is that we want to link the data which is already there from the retailers and so on. When do we actually consume what, and implement that in a data model? And that's the basic idea of what we're doing. We can come back to that later when it comes to the USP. But when I look at the vision, I want to have more data-driven farming in the future. That's the basic idea we need to follow, because only data will enable us to have less waste, basically.
And how does it work on a daily basis? So you have the idea of growing a strawberry, then somebody can approach you, or do you build them yourselves? How does it work? So from, seeding the strawberry, and how does the daily life of a strawberry look like? And then, how does it get to a supermarket or to the consumer? So what is the production? How does it work?
Well, let's separate that into the business model and the production itself. So starting with the production, basically we need plants. We need strawberry plants. So we may need to make sure that we have the right quality of strawberry plant, then propagate the strawberry plant, so make it bigger, and then start producing fruits. And then the fruits get harvested and packed, commissioned, and then brought to the supermarket. So the challenge is to get the right plant material, to have it in the right balance, because the strawberry plants sometimes lasts up to 12 months in a system, and it needs to be managed. And when it comes to short term, I think everybody can grow a strawberry in hydroponics on their shelves. But the magic comes from the strategy. So how do we treat the plants along the way and have them in balance when it comes to the right, I don't want to get too technical, but I think this makes sense to understand, is that we need to grow leaves and we need to grow strawberries on a plant. And this ratio needs to be in the right order. And if it doesn't, we need to act. We need to make it hotter, colder, more humid, more CO2, whatever it is, more lights, less lights, and change the actual behavior of the plant by manipulating the environment, and then we can get good fruits in the right yield we actually need to be profitable, and then give them over to the supermarket.
I already had the pleasure to taste your amazingly sweet and, of course, tasty strawberries. So I can only say one of the outcomes of your company is, a very high quality, you make possible. So besides the unquestionable output of your high quality products, how does vGreen make a change-making impact in comparison to other farming companies? For example, you just mentioned lights. So as an energy company, we are very interested in energy consumption, compared to usual farming. So do you have an insight for us here?
Yes. So first of all, I honor everyone who is running a farming company, especially the traditional ones. That is very hard work. Insanely hard work, especially when it comes to the strawberry. And the profit itself sometimes doesn't exist. And more often this happens in the latest times. So we see a trend of not producing domestic anymore. And that trend is quite drastic if we look at the last 9 to 10 years, where we almost halved the domestic production. Still, the demand is rising. So we need to figure out, we're looking at the German market. So we need to understand that our production methods may be too expensive due to a certain fact that it is a seasonal product, the strawberry. So every farmer in Germany has the same period where to shine and to operate. So the uniqueness gets lost. And to challenge that, a lot of greenhouses have been commissioned and started. And I think that's the right approach to cover the shoulder month next to the strawberry season, to be more flexible in production and play around with the varieties and have the right variety at the right stage in time during a year. But I think even more than that needs to be implemented, because one aspect is that a lot of fruits still go through other entities and probably have 3 to 4 companies in between before, like from harvest to the customer. There are too many points of deliveries and commissioning and so on and so forth. So sometimes it takes more than 24 hours to get a strawberry harvested and ready in the shelf. So I think there is still room for improvement. And now I think it's the right aspect to say what we are doing different on that one is that we try to implement the actual buyer, so the procurement of a retailer, into our web interface. And from there on, the procurement is able to order, in this case, strawberries ahead of time. So let's say they want to buy strawberries in the future because they will be incentivized with lower costs. So let's say a kilogram in the procurement costs €7. And if they order 30 days in advance, we can bring that down to €6 per kilogram. Why can we do this? Because we can plan. We are able to control the crop in that certain area of 30 days to accelerate or slow it down. And this will lead to less labor, less energy, and less waste. And that's basically the idea which we want to implement for the future for every crop, not only the strawberry, is if we get the retailers to order in advance in a, let's say, more organized way, then it might be a very good next step to reduce waste and reduce resources, and also have the better influence on the quality of the strawberry, which is an aspect, because I think everybody knows the strawberries in February are like, I should not buy them probably.
No, they're not as good.
Yes. So I think we need to raise the quality. We need to lower the price. We need to be more organized in our day-to-day collaboration with retailers and farmers. And I know how hard it is as a farmer to grow out of it. But us as a startup have the possibility to interview both sides and figure out what is actually the problem. And it seems that plannability, seasonable independence, and the right customer relationship between the actual growing system and the procurement is key to let's say, introduce the next steps of farming.
You just mentioned lots of benefits and incredible facts about vertical farming. If you look into the future, and what further potential do you see, or do you think vertical farming has? For example, don't we need any mango by plane? That's a scenario you would think. So we will also save lots of CO2 probably then.
Honestly speaking, there will be still a bit of time needed until we grow our own papayas, mangoes, avocados here in Germany. But I wouldn't say it's impossible. So maybe just thought that flying produce will be a hard thing because of our restrictions of the EU, of the procurement laws, and so on and so forth. So it will be really hard for every retailer to buy stuff which is flown in due to the fact of the CO2 footprint and so on. So it will be harder for them to get like money from the banks, like to be able to get loans on their sustainability score. So I think the need for a retailer to think differently on their produce and how it's like a vertical integration of the production, basically. I think that is needed from the retailer side, especially in Europe, because we have so strong retailers. They are known everywhere in the world. They are probably still the strongest everywhere in the world. And when it comes to the force to enable the vertical integration of producing, especially fresh produce. Yeah. It's basically the need of the retailer side. And when we talk about vertical integration, a retailer wants to stay lean. That's what we experienced. Obviously not to have too expensive, let's say, growing methods, because they need to address the masses. And how do you address the masses is that you compete with pricing. So vertical farming has one issue, is a lot of energy consumption. What does that mean for the next steps of farming? I think there will always be time where we see fields of salads growing. I think this will never change, or at least not to a certain extent. So we will always grow what is easy to grow in the fields. Why shouldn't we? Because we have the land, we have the possibilities. It doesn't take too much CO2, and sometimes not even anything. So let's stick to that. That makes sense. The next step was greenhouse. Makes sense to have the shoulder month covered. And then vertical farming came up. And vertical farming excludes the sun. And obviously at vGreens, we ask why. Why do we need to exclude sun? It makes sense on a pesticide-free. You can build it up anywhere in the world, and so on and so forth. But does it make sense? It makes sense to a certain point. Let's say Kuwait. Let's say the south of Abu Dhabi, Liwa, for example, and other places like Alaska. Maybe that changed already, but there are certain points in the area, like there are certain areas in the world where it makes sense to put up a black box. But I think there's a step between the greenhouse and the black box. We need to reduce the land we actually use for growing crops. So that's why we go vertical. But can I use sunlight? That has a lot to do with the radiation wherever we are in the world. So we developed a software, or maybe still code. I wouldn't call it software because we don't have a front end yet. But anyways, what we're doing is to get every resource we can find to figure out what is actually the benchmark of resources available wherever we want to build a farm. So let's say we set something up here in Essen. When I look outside the window, it's all gray and wet and cold. So so it might make sense to figure out, okay, where is warmth produced? So let's say a steel kind of production, or wherever warmth is introduced into the process and it's waste. So let's use that to actually produce fruits in a greenhouse. But let's put the greenhouse on the next level by implementing more sensors, so we can actually have more transparency on the actual production efficiency, and implement the possibility to let the customer decide what he wants in a certain amount of time. So I think there's a huge variety on production methods, and we should stick to all of them, not say this is good, this is bad. No. I think it's all individual a decision-making process. The only, let's say, sentence which needs to be very, very clear is what kind of resources, or the question is, what kind of resources are available and how can I implement them?
Let's get back to some obstacles you mentioned, and perhaps also challenges in starting a vertical farming company, especially in Germany. So you said we have the fields, we have the space, and there are ways to actually, as you just show with your company, to produce more efficiently and more intelligently. But why aren't there more vertical farming companies yet? And are there any, I don't know, did you face any field-specific regulations, or what is the challenge in starting a new company in general, not only vertical farming company? Perhaps you can give us there a glimpse of your experience, please.
Yes, so it might be a bit distracting, but this was one of the quotes which helped me to get through that, is when Elon Musk got told that his company won't work out, is due to the fact the most revenue which was made in the car industry was for after sales, so a fleet was needed. So whenever someone had a fleet, or if it's Ford, if it's Volkswagen, whatsoever, they already had a fleet and made 20% of 80% of their revenue on after sales. So almost no margin on sales of cars. So to get into the car industry, it was really important to have margin on the cars. So that was one aspect which I implemented for my challenges is what is the main difficulty is to set up something to produce. You can buy land, but what's the innovation here? So you need to build something up, and that's the capex heavy part, which is very, very crucial in the very beginning. And that's a hurdle we had to take by partnering with general contractors, which we did so far, who help us out by setting up the hardware. And obviously we do a partnership in the end with selected general contractors to set up farms so they can actually do a new business model, which is selling farms, whether they have been in automotive or whatever kind of industry, they can now also build farms, which is interesting for them, because if we think further, that's a huge point of the next industry, or the next step of that industry is to set up more technical devices. But what kind of technical devices are them? Because most of the general contractors, they can build anything, but they don't know if it's working or not from a plant perspective. So that's where we come into play, is how to partner with a general contractor by promising, okay, we take care of the plants, you take care of the hardware, you help us out in the very first beginning of the cash flow problems, because whenever we buy something, which is hardware, we sit on that for ages until we make revenue out of it. Like even in the prototyping, like on the technical readiness level scale, we need to climb up. We need to come to number 8 or 9 to be able to commercialize. So yeah, without partnering, everything's possible if you have enough cash in the beginning. But if I look at my perspective, we only had a couple of 100,000 to start off, which was a lot for us. But if I look at the industry, it's nothing. So that's not nothing, but it's definitely way less to start a commercial farm. So I think that's fair to say. So one of the hurdles is capex heavy start, to get independence on the general contractor side, because obviously you don't want to sell the very your idea to the very first general contractor in the very beginning, because you need to grow that yourself. I mean, we need to implement more crops and so on and so forth. And one aspect you need to achieve as a startup founder is independence. Other than that, it is really hard to get funded if you are dependent on someone, especially that heavy. Yeah. So basically, this is probably one of the biggest hurdles we faced so far, because the already existing benchmarking infrastructure is already there, and it is really hard to keep up to that and make margin on selling farms, because the depreciation in the end eats up the margin of every produce being sold.
I saw in your recent LinkedIn post in the past weeks that you have been to Malaysia and Singapore. So how important is the globalization and network beyond Europe for your company's growth? I think personally it's very interesting, as vGreens enables the local production. This could also be interpreted as a contrast to globalization and international trade routes of farming products.
Yeah, so there are several reasons why we should consider Singapore and Malaysia, but maybe starting in Europe itself. So we have a very mature supply chain system here in Europe, where we actually can produce almost everything at a very good price point, although obviously there are some crops which we need to fly in. But if we only look at the numbers, until 2030, we will have around 450 to 500 million people in Europe, and 350 to 400 only in North America. So if we look at Asia, we are looking at 4.5 billion people. So that is almost four times the amount of people we need to serve in terms of agricultural produce. With that being said, it just makes sense to also start off in Asia as well, and Singapore is probably one of the best starting points to do so. They have a really great R&D hub where we want to set off and start getting plant materials going in that region, which we can implement into our systems. And Malaysia is one country which is emerging very strong with their new king coming in, I think last week. So there's a lot of plans for Malaysia and Singapore to grow, and we use that as a starting point for the Asian markets. It is important also to enhance our production facilities here in Europe, but also them in Asia, because in the end, the more data we have, the better, and to serve the more people, the better. So that's basically a two-way approach, not only Europe, but also Asia, starting in Singapore.
Wow, what a fabulous development. Congratulations to such a wonderful startup. And I just can't emphasize enough. I really admire your doing and your vision. And I have to admit as well that you're in Essen like we are. So, but the time is already, coming to an end. So I'd like to ask you just one more question. So who's your favorite change maker? Who do you admire for his or her groundbreaking spirit?
I love that question. And it changed various times, honestly speaking, because, examples may change as well because someone or yourself is changing. So when it came to my side, I had several examples. The one I would love to mention today is Jensen Huang, because from my side, as the CEO of NVIDIA, he's probably one of the leading tech CEOs. From a social perspective, he seems to be the person to have the balance right when it comes to be polite but direct. And look at, he always says what possibly could come up, which stops me. So just get everything at me and I will solve it. And that's what he did. And that's why NVIDIA is so successful. And that's what I like about him, is that he still has his social view on running a company, which I'm missing sometimes at someone else. Very successful people is the connection to the people who are working for that company. Yeah. So he's probably the example at this stage where I'm saying, okay, he's my example I want to get to. I know it's quite big, but he's, I think, a very, very interesting personality.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your refreshing input and insights. We also very much hope that you, dear listeners, enjoyed your episode. If so, we would be delighted if you would just subscribe to our ESFORIN Change Makers podcast via the usual podcast channels, and see you until the next episode. And thank you so much, Claas.
Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure. And I think we're out. Thanks.